Sleck here, and today we're going over 7 tips and tricks of the Chocobo racing in Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. The opinion on these minigames are fairly divided. Some of you love them, some of you hate them. But in my opinion, they're one of the more enjoyable minigames to come out of Final Fantasy, and it really pays homage to the original. So stay tuned, as we have a lot to cover here today. Even if you're a bit of a pro at the races, you'll probably find some tips and tricks here that you didn't know about. Starting off at number 1. You can get a boost at the start of each race by pressing R2 and X just as the timer hits 2. The timer's pretty precise here, but there isn't any penalty for not performing it correctly, so it's worth attempting this at the start of each race. Even if the speed boost is only slight, it's still handy to get ahead of the AI races. Number 2. As you go through the courses, you'll probably notice a bunch of different coloured balloons. You got your yellow, you got your red, you got your blue. Really, as you're racing, it's the blue ones you should be focusing on here. They're the ones that increase your speed for each time you pick one up. And as you get to the more difficult races throughout this mini game, you'll find that if you're not running around at a high speed, maybe 8, 9, 10, the AI racers are just going to be all over you. It's not to say that you shouldn't bother going after the other colours, but your main focus should be on getting that speed max as quickly as possible. Number 3. Most of the tracks are going to have some shortcuts. They're likely going to save you some time, but they can also be quite helpful at avoiding the obstacles. Some of these are pretty easy to find, some of them you're going to have to look a little bit harder. Oftentimes you're going to be running past them before you notice them, so just bear that in mind and then try and remember them on your next lap. If you're really struggling to find any of the shortcuts, take a look around, see if you can see any power-ups that are seemingly out of the ordinary, floating in the air somewhere you can't obviously get to. Alternatively, you can always look up some YouTube videos. I have a playlist with all of the tracks, so I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to go check that out. Number 4. As you play through the game, you'll be unlocking different chocobos, all of a range of different stats and power-ups. Which ones you want to use will be down to you and your own personal preferences, and also how far through the main story you are. Personally, I went with the purple chocobo as the speed and acceleration stats were really good, and I was also quite fond of the power-up as you can use this essentially to fire at any chocobo ahead of you, so if you're in second struggling to catch up with the one in first, using this power-up was really handy to narrow the gap. You may already know these ones, but we're going to quickly go over what all the stats are and what they do, and what I personally think you should be focusing on. So the first one is speed. This one is essentially your chocobo's max speed. Increasing this stat increases how fast your chocobo can go. The next one is acceleration. This one deals with how quickly your chocobo gets up to that max speed stat. So how relevant this one is to you depends on how often you're hitting into things. For myself, this was very essential as I have a bit of a habit of banging into doors, obstacles, other chocobos, and what this essentially means is I can get back up to that maximum speed a lot quicker with a high stat of acceleration. Then we have weight. This stat's advantages are that it prevents your chocobo from being beaten up too much by the other AI racers, but it does come with a disadvantage that it does shorten your flight time, so some shortcuts maybe not going to be possible or viable with this stat, but overall I didn't see too many negatives in there. It didn't seem to slow the chocobo down, so I wouldn't worry too much about this stat. If you happen to put some equipment on that raises everything else you want and your weight's a bit high, I wouldn't worry about it. The next one we have is cornering. As the name suggests, this one affects how well your chocobo can take corners. Depending on whether you're struggling to get around the corners or if a particular track you're doing is really difficult, you don't often have to worry about this, but again, it does come down to your playstyle and whether you are. If you're going around a corner trying to drift and constantly going into a wall, then yes, invest in this stat, but if you're getting around alright otherwise and you're not really having any issues, still focus on speed and acceleration. Then we have intelligence. This one's quite straightforward. It affects the power of your special abilities. So if you've got an offensive spell, I found this isn't too great, especially with the siege shot. But if you're using something like the dash power-up chocobo, then yes, this is a very handy one because it will improve how good that power-up is. And finally we have strength. This one essentially is how good your chocobo is at staying put on the track, mostly when we're talking about being bumped around by the other chocobos. If you find that you're getting knocked into other obstacles after hitting a chocobo, this stat will prevent how much your chocobo is sliding from left to right after getting bumped. Number 5. You can actually avoid some of the watery elements on some tracks by riding close to the wall at the edge of the water bodies. Space is a little bit tight here, so there is a risk of you bumping into the wall a couple of times, but even if you do end up hitting the wall a couple of times, don't worry, as the advantage you gain over not getting slowed by the water and potentially avoiding multiple obstacles nearly always works out better. Number 6. Just as selecting the right Chocobo can help you win, so can selecting the right equipment. When starting out, I found the Merc gear was one of the best at prioritising speed and acceleration. As you go through the courses and unlock other gear, you may want to change it up a little bit to whatever matches your playstyle. And last but not least, number 7. Alongside the 3 main Chocobo grades, grade 3, 2, 1, also known as the Gold Cup, there are actually 2 other hidden races that you can do whilst playing through the game. The first of which is the Chocobo Sage Race, which is part of the Billy side quest. The track itself isn't too difficult, but the Sage's Chocobo is pretty quick. Use the best armour available, and don't forget your power-up, Choco Bubble. And finally, it's everyone's favourite, the Mecha Chocobo. This one is only available after completing every single side quest in the game. Once you've done this, you'll notice that you get another side quest appear in the Corral region. This quest, Can't Stop Won't Stop, involves you beating the Shinra Middle Manager in a variety of different mini-games across the Golden Saucer. One of these, of course, is the Mecha Chocobo race. If you're not particularly good or confident in these races, this one is going to be a bit of a pain for you because he's both quick and the course itself is littered with obstacles. But the good news is you don't have to do it on your first try, so just keep at it and eventually you'll be able to beat him and bring home the Mecha Chocobo. So, that was 7 tips and tricks for Chocobo racing in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What did you all think? Did you find this helpful? Did you learn anything new? Or do you have any tips and tricks you wish to share with us? Let me know in the comments below, and remember, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.